Worldwide parent coach and conscious educator Sue DeCaro is on a mission to revitalize the joy in parenting. Welcome to Conscious Parents, Thriving Kids, a podcast designed to help parents all over the world create deeper connections with themselves and their children while overcoming life's daily parenting challenges. Listen in if you want to bring more laughter, love, and enjoyment to your home life.
Welcome to Conscious Parents, Thriving Kids, a place for all things parenting. I am your host, Sue DeCaro. I am super excited today to introduce to you my special guest, Carlota Nelson. Carlota is half Swedish, half Argentine, and born in Japan. She is a Madrid-based screenwriter and director, specializing in cross-media social impact documentaries, art house biographies, as well as science and educational films. A member of the Academy of Cinematography, Arts and Sciences of Spain, Carlota is a highly experienced bilingual storyteller whose documentary work has spanned global social and cultural topics, including art and apartheid in South Africa, censorship in Kuala Lumpur, and recidivism in Americans' women's prisons. She is also the researcher, writer, director, and promoter of the groundbreaking feature documentary Brain Matters, a film that explores the science of early childhood, which has become a reference within the global scientific and educational communities. I am so excited that you're here today, Carlota. Welcome, and it's an honor to begin to talk about these things on this podcast episode with our listeners.
Thank you very much, Sue, for having me and for supporting our work.
Well, your work is vital, and so let's dive into your work and talk a little bit about raising children in the early years. I know in the documentary, which I am super supportive of and have seen more than once, you talk about the use of intentional language. And I wondered if you could shed some light for our listeners on the importance of the language and the intentionality of it in these early years for children.
Of course. Thank you for asking me that question. Well, what a child experiences directly affects their brain. And if we think about the fact that we are our brains, like David Fitzpatrick from the Max Planck Institute of Neuroscience says in the film, we really have to pay attention to these experiences. Because parents and caregivers are really the children's first brain designer. Everything that we are gets played out in front of our children, and the brains absorb that information and lock into it and build an architecture that not only gets them through infancy and childhood, but it takes it into their lives, puts them through school and prepares them for jobs, as well as creative and imaginative work of their own. So everyday situations and these experiences should include intentional language. So when we speak about language and the importance of narrating to our children, we should really try to make that language rich and varied and use synonyms. It's okay to use baby talk sometimes, but we should be sure to use the adult word too. For example, you can say it's time for din, but it's also good to say we will have dinner now. So the baby's brain is like a computer, right? And it's focusing on those sounds and the statistics that they gather when they listen to us talk. And they're using that to form a network in the brain. So parents should really know that their babies are actually ready to acquire words. And something also very important is that, parents should know that what they should do with their infants when they're first born is crucial. So if they haven't grown up in a household without a lot of verbal communication, They aren't aware that they should be talking and interacting with their children. And that's what scientists call the 30 million word gap. So children, by the time they're 3, have been exposed to that many fewer words. And so awareness of that, parents knowing the importance of talking and singing and rhyming with their children, and exposing them to language.
Can I interrupt here and just ask you to talk a little bit more about the 30 million word gap? Can you explain a little bit more about that? Because I think that's really important in these early years to for our listeners and, you know, for the world at large to understand how crucial this is.
Of course. So the main problem in the world today is that children, when they get to school, there's 250 million children that get to school, and they're already on a back foot when they begin. And a lot of that has to do with the lack of language and interaction with their parents. So what the scientists refer to with the study of the 30 million word gap is in comparison to moderate and high income peers they may have in school. If they've been exposed to few words, then they're already on a back foot when they start school. And just imagine what that does to their social skills and the way they think of themselves.
That's awesome. Yeah. And so important. So let's talk a little bit about the kinds of conversations and kinds of statements, discussions in everyday life. Would you mind sharing some beautiful examples? I know you can, of ways, you know, from morning till evening that we can actually use language and use rich language in having these, you know, kinds of quote unquote conversations and word sharing, you know, to help our children's network in their brains, as you described it.
Of course. And well, something I wanted to say before I go into examples is Patricia Kuhl from the University of Washington did a study, pretty fascinating study. And the amount of words that babies hear from face-to-face interactions with their child helps determine the amount of words that child will speak at 2. So just knowing that fact is fascinating, and it's a real call to action. And to give you some examples, you know, from birth to 2 years, you look at your baby when they make sounds, talk back to them, and repeat those sounds. Respond when your baby laughs. Talk to your baby as you give them a bath or feed or dress them. Talk about what you're doing or where you're going. You can point out colors and shapes, count what you see, and read to your child. You don't have to read every word, but you can talk about the pictures and ask your child, what's this? And try to get them to point or name objects. Other examples could be, you know, ask questions that include a choice. Do you want an apple or an orange, right? Or do you want to wear your pink shirt or your red shirt? You can also help your child learn new words, name body parts, and singing is also very important. You know, nursery rhymes, and everything that you can do with your child that involves synchronicity, for example. It's been proved that all of these acts of synchronicity actually help your child become cooperative and generous later on.
Talk a little bit more about, if you don't mind. I'm just trying to think through the synchronicity. What exactly do you mean by the synchronicity helping our children later on. Can you kind of tie that together a little more specifically for us?
Sure, of course. Well, for example, when you're walking with your child down the street or in the park and you hold hands and you're just waving your hands right back and forth, clapping games, singing, all of these, music also obviously and play are so important when you speak to children. But all of these acts of synchronicity help children be more cooperative and generous and learn how to take turns.
How would you describe modeling as well when it comes to, synchronicity and it comes to teaching? I'm just going to throw that in there. I know it's a little out of alignment with language, but how important is a parent's modeling in these scenarios, which teach our child, all sorts of things that help them in their life and their adult years?
Of course. Well, everything we are gets played out in front of our children. So
Absolutely.
if we want to be, if we want our children to be generous and critical thinkers and helpful, we have to be that in front of them, and try to model that behavior. And everyday situations are wonderful opportunities to engage children, in things, very important things like eye contact and being present with them and have meaningful and conscious interactions. Another fascinating study from the Institute of Learning and Brain Sciences says that the baby brain actually needs human face-to-face interactions. Humans were not built to interact with machines. And that's not how we were designed or how we evolved. In fact, we survive as a species because we've learned to collaborate and cooperate and communicate.
I have always heard that we're wired as human beings to be connected, to connect. And by connecting, it's not to a device, it's to other human beings, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Too many devices in our world.
Yes.
So
And
do you,
yes,
go ahead.
no, go. I wanted to, because in the film we didn't get a chance to talk about bilingualism.
Mm.
And in America, I know that Spanish is one of the most important languages aside from English. And I think a lot of parents believe that if you're speaking to children in different languages, they'll take longer to speak, or it will just confuse them. And actually, at 11 months old, a baby's brain is prepared to learn whatever language they're exposed to, or a combination of languages. So a baby brain is perfectly capable of learning two languages at the same time. And actually, it's interesting that in studies at the University of Washington, they did studies with monolingual and bilingual groups. And the bilingual group actually had stronger responses to language sound in these prefrontal areas. And we know that prefrontal regions are involved with the ability to control attention, shift back and forth between different tasks, and think flexibly. And the other important advantage is that these cognitive abilities increase later and translate into protective factors from Alzheimer's disease. So that's I'll leave you with that fascinating fact from the Institute of Brain Sciences at the University of Washington.
Wow, that's an enormous and beautiful gift we could give ourselves and our children, of course. I love how you shared, that at 11 months old, an 11-month-old baby, that their brains can actually learn a combination of languages. I'm always so impressed when I see children whose parents may be bilingual learning, multiple languages and able to hear in one language and answer in a different language, and how it seems as if, and correct me if I'm wrong, that their brain is actually able to think in both languages.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And in these studies that were done at the University of Washington, um, they actually proved that children are able to differentiate what um, the language that the adult they're interacting with speaks. So if that baby is bilingual in Spanish and English, for example, if they know that the adult they're speaking with does not know Spanish, then the child will speak English.
Mm, wow, that's awesome. It's so interesting because when I was a child, I don't believe, from my recollection, that we were as aware, or the adults in our lives were as aware of the importance of language and languages and the infant's brain to the extent that we are today, and that you're bringing out to so many worldwide in this beautiful documentary. Would you say a lot has
Yes.
changed with that and understanding?
Well, I think that I mean we haven't invented anything. We've just put together decades and decades of work from this global army of early childhood development researchers and scientists and educators with the latest neuroscience. I think that a lot of parents and educators intuitively knew from reading about psychology and biology and education and early childhood development. They knew it was important to speak to children. They knew it was important to play, um, but they didn't have the science behind it. So that's what we've tried to do, is share this information with everyone.
And you're doing it beautifully. And I think for many people, the science behind these types of things is really important to understand how to bring it to life in the best way. So, science really can speak loudly and speak volumes to many people in this world.
Yes, and I think, Sue, that it's very important for people to know that this isn't an ideology. It's not a trend. It's not a fashion. It's not about religion or politics. It's science.
Hmm.
Um, so business leaders and politicians, as well as parents and grandparents and educators, ought to be very interested in what happens in these first years of life, because that's when children are in the family. Because then we kind of give up our children to the schools in a sense, and
Right.
so everything we can do at this critical time, what Stephen in his interview with you um, called the miracle years, that
Mhm.
the golden opportunity. We are the baby's brain's first designers.
Yeah, I love how you put that. So as the first designers, I'm gonna lead us into a different realm, but directly related, of course. As the baby's first designers, how important is the idea of and the arena of play, and play inside and out? Can you shed some light on that for us?
Oh, sure, I would love to. Well, there's so many experts and high quality programs and models on play in the world. Tools of the Mind is one example. And Kathy Hirsch-Pasek from the Temple Infant Lab are doing incredible work. They've studied play for decades. So basically, when kids play, they are learning to learn. So it's not a question of, I think some people think that the baby brain is kind of like an empty vessel that you just have to, put things in. Um, And so it's not a question of getting these babies and young infants to count and to, learn math. What they need to do is play, because when they play, they're learning to learn. When they're using or playing with blocks, they're starting to learn the concept of up and down and inside and out and left and right.
So with the blocks, Carlota, and the learning that takes place, I can certainly understand how important it is for the brain to learn and to have the ability to actually connect with items and things in front of them as a way to perhaps engage all their senses as well as see things and feel things and move things and see the cause and effect, so to speak, at a very young age. Like with blocks, you pile up blocks and they fall over, cause and effect. Is that part of the learning process as well that you're referring to?
Absolutely, it is. It is, because aside from learning these spatial concepts, they're learning these cause and effects, and in terms of play, what scientists have told me and have shared with me is that intentional guided play, led by adults and caregivers, is very important. When you play dress up, or pretend to be me, or this guided play, that's just as important as free play. Letting children work things out on their own and play with whatever they want to play. And it's not a question of money or toys. You can play with pots and pans. You can play when you're cooking. So kids, when they're engaging in these play activities, whether they're intentional and guided or free play, the science proves that they're doing well. They're going to do well in terms of their math and their reading, and acquiring the kind of skills that we want to see in children. And also, I'd like to add that letting children deal with boredom is also very important. Letting children even deal with stressful circumstances. And I'm not speaking about toxic stress. I'm speaking about not doing everything for them, letting them figure things out on their own.
I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because boredom in my eyes and in my teachings worldwide is a gift for children. They don't need every moment filled with constructive activities or organized play. They need to learn how to be creative, and if they don't have any space in their day, in their time, in their life, how can they?
Absolutely, absolutely, yes.
I agree as well well, of course I agree. You're the expert. But I think the importance of being able to figure things out on their own with another child at a very young age, obviously with some guidance if it starts to become, a little bit ugly, but to be able to solve basic problems, to be able to try to get a toy and us not going to get it, but letting a child who's born intrinsically motivated continue with that motivation, correct? By moving forward to the toy. If they're crawling, sometimes you can see a parent handing the child the toy. But what if we just allow the child to go for the toy when they get there?
Exactly. We have to take a little bit of a step back sometimes and let them figure things out on their own. And parents will see the incredible results from letting children do what they want to do at times, right? And obviously that goes back to modeling behavior, right? They also have to see you at times when maybe you're bored, and so you pick up a book, or you play a board game, or you write a letter, right? They need to see the adult, that behavior in the adults, so they can learn that too.
Yeah, it's beautiful. As models for our children, They watch everything we do and everything we say. When I was a kid, my parents used to say, do as we say, not as we do. I don't know if you've ever heard that statement, but that was popular in my home. And nothing against my parents. That was the time. In today's world, they're doing as we're doing, and they're watching every move we make, even when we don't think they're watching.
Exactly. Al Race from the Center on the Developing Child at Harvard told me something very, very interesting. He said, a lot of people think that children are just born resilient when they are. And that is not accurate scientifically. He says that for a child to be, and later an adult, to be resilient, he or she has to have seen a model at home or through a caregiver to be resilient, to learn how to be resilient.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they have to have opportunity to experience and practice these skills for sure.
Exactly.
That's beautiful. Well, you are such a rich source of incredible information, and just a delight to join me here on my podcast episode. I would love for you to share where people can find out more about you, the documentary, how to support Brain Matters, and anything else that you'd love to share to help our listeners just move forward in raising these beautiful children, our next generation.
Oh, of course, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to do so. We encourage people to visit our website, and that's brainmattersfilm.com. It's a bilingual website, and it's full of resources. What we've done throughout all of the research that we've done and putting the film together, we've compiled the best parenting and educational resources that are free and available on our website. We encourage people to host a screening in their neighborhood or community center. We send them a high quality downloadable link with all of these wonderful materials that we've put together, including a discussion guide and customizable materials like the poster that they can add their information on. We encourage also people to watch and share the film, as well as sign our petition to global leaders, because parents, have the most important job in the world, parents and educators.
Mm-hmm.
And to do it well, they need help. They need help and support and services. So the petition that we've created on change.org, we want to encourage global leaders to keep their promises and really start designing and implementing, family-friendly policies. So if your listeners can join and sign and share the petition, they'll be helping us create a better world for all children.
I love it. And I will certainly add all of these links so that our listeners can easily navigate from one to the other. Because I obviously have seen all your sites and know how important the work that you're doing in this world is. And I support you more than 100%. So thank you for everything that you do each and every day to make this a better world for our children.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue. And thank you for the important work you do.
Thank you. To our listeners, thank you for joining us. And remember, every moment is a new moment for conscious connections.
Thanks for listening to Conscious Parents, Thriving Kids. If you like what you heard, the best compliment you can give us is to share this podcast with a friend. And be sure to give us some stars and a favorable review at Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen in.